This man's name is Jerry Fenn, a journalist specializing in hot news, who was once very popular. However, his career was now on the decline. That day, Jerry arrived in a small suburban town, hoping to find a special story that could salvage his career. While talking to a farmer, Jerry suddenly noticed an oak tree standing alone in the middle of a field. Beneath the tree he saw something shiny. Upon checking, he discovered it was a corn husk doll. The farmer told him that these dolls were usually buried under trees by locals to bring good luck. However, this particular doll had an eerie face. Underneath a past date was engraved, February 31st, 1845. Jerry suddenly came up with a story he could turn into a newspaper article. He immediately crushed the doll's head under his foot, then even asked the farmer to help him take some photos, mainly to fabricate a spiritual story and attract readers. Jerry had no idea that what he had just done had set the town up for a terrifying curse. That evening, while driving back to the city, due to a moment of distraction, Jerry almost ran over a little girl standing in the middle of the road. Fortunately, he managed to swerve just in time. The girl then slowly walked into the forest. Curious, Jerry followed her. Arriving at the oak tree in the middle of the field, he saw the girl standing before it mumbling something before suddenly collapsing. Panicked, Jerry quickly carried her to the house of a nearby priest. Coincidentally, the priest was her uncle. They then called a female doctor to check on her. The girl's name was Alice, and luckily, she was not seriously harmed. The doctor, Natalie, said that Alice had been born mute and deaf and could only communicate through sign language. However, Jerry insisted that he had just heard the girl speaking with his own ears. Dr. Natalie did not believe him and assumed he was drunk and imagining things. The accident caused Jerry to miss his article deadline. The editorial office then demanded that he quickly find another compelling topic to compensate for the delay. Jerry suddenly recalled how Alice had inexplicably started speaking and decided to stay in town to investigate. The next morning, at church, the prayer service proceeded as usual. While Alice was praying, she suddenly heard a sound. She seemed entranced, slowly stood up and walked outside. Curious, the people around her followed. Alice then stood in front of the oak tree and saw a woman surrounded by a bright glowing light. It seemed that only she could see her. In front of everyone's astonished eyes, Alice suddenly spoke for the first time since birth. This was the first time she could hear and talk. Those around her, believing that the Virgin Mary had appeared, clasped their hands together in prayer. Jerry was also there, witnessing the event. He was extremely excited, thinking that once this story was published, it would surely restore his former fame. However, that night while sleeping, Jerry had a strange dream. The sky was filled with red clouds, the corn husk doll slowly cracked apart, and someone with a pitch-black face crawled on a stream slowly approaching him. Terrified, Jerry jolted awake. The next day, news about Alice's ability to speak had attracted the attention of many devotees. They flocked to the oak tree to witness the miracle. Some families even brought their paralyzed children hoping for a miracle. The town's priest saw the growing crowd and worried that this would negatively affect his niece Alice, so he asked them to disperse. However, Alice said nothing and simply walked to the oak tree. Once again, she saw the woman from before, glowing in a radiant light. Smiling, Alice walked over to the paralyzed boy and said that the Virgin Mary had blessed him and asked him to try standing up. In front of the astonished eyes of hundreds of witnesses, the boy who had been paralyzed was suddenly able to walk. Everyone was amazed, kneeling down and praying fervently. At that moment, inside the church, the eyes of the Virgin Mary's statue suddenly started bleeding. The miracles occurring in this small town quickly caught the attention of the Vatican. They sent a priest along with an assistant to investigate and verify the truth. If it was confirmed to be a genuine miracle, the church would consider recognizing this place as a new holy site. The priest, despite seeing his church gain fame and recognition, still felt uneasy and suspicious. He decided to visit the oak tree alone, where he found the shattered doll from before. Unaware, a shadowy figure in a hooded cloak appeared right in front of him. The next day, the assistant priest Monsignor came to meet Alice to verify the miracle. While they were talking, the priest suddenly suffered a stroke and collapsed. Alice, in a panic, rushed over, touched him and said, "Uncle, believe in the Virgin Mary." The moment he nodded, his pain miraculously vanished. After undergoing a hospital examination, the doctors were shocked to discover that his tumor had completely disappeared. This entire incident was witnessed by Monsignor. Believing it to be a true miracle, the church decided to declare this place a holy site. News of the event quickly spread nationwide. Thousands of people from across the country flocked to the town. They worshipped Alice, seeing her as the embodiment of the Virgin Mary. While everyone considered it a miracle, only the priest remained skeptical. That day, while alone in the church, he suddenly found a book hidden inside the wall. Upon opening it, the priest's face became astonished. At that moment, a cloaked shadow slowly appeared before him. Before the priest could escape, it blocked his path and attacked. Meanwhile, Jerry was walking with Dr. Natalie. As they passed the stream, he realized this was the place he had seen in his dream. Jerry had just looked down at the water when he felt something unusual. That evening, he went to the church to meet the priest. However, upon entering he saw the priest's body hanging in mid-air. The police quickly arrived and removed the body from the scene. For Catholics, suicide is unacceptable. The clergyman wanted Jerry to keep this matter confidential for further investigation. After the priest's unusual death, Alice was deeply saddened. Jerry met and interviewed the girl with a few questions. He believed there was something haunted about this matter, but Alice insisted on believing in the Virgin Mary. After the conversation, Jerry returned to the hotel and reviewed the interview video. He discovered a dark shadow beside Alice leaning into the frame. Suddenly, it lunged at him, startling him. Jerry could no longer conceal his doubts and confided everything to Dr. Natalie. They decided to go together to the church archives to investigate. There, Jerry found the priest's book. The book told of a woman named Mary, who lived nearly 200 years ago. She was considered a witch serving Satan, with the ability to heal any illness. Mary deceived the villagers, claiming that her power was granted by the Virgin Mary. The more people served and offered their souls to her, the stronger she became. After many efforts, the villagers captured Mary and executed her under an oak tree. To prevent her soul from resurrecting, they placed her remains inside a corn doll. However, they didn't know that Mary could still reincarnate through her descendants. When Jerry broke the doll, it awakened the witch. At this point, Mary's power was nearly at its peak, quickly sensing Jerry's presence. Immediately, she appeared, intending to attack. Fortunately, Jerry promptly pulled the doctor into the sunlight, preventing her from continuing the pursuit. Meanwhile, Alice was unaware she was aiding the devil. She gathered many followers and announced that the Virgin Mary wanted to bless them. The ceremony would take place that evening. Many reporters arrived, and the news quickly spread. Jerry wanted to stop the ceremony, so he met with Assistant Monsino and the clergyman, asking for their help. He also discovered another horrifying truth. Before her death, Mary was pregnant and gave birth to a child. Through many generations, Alice is now her last descendant, and Mary can only resurrect through her lineage. While discussing this with the doctor, suddenly, the documents on the screen melted, and the statue of the Virgin Mary in the room shattered, revealing Mary's face inside. Thinking escape was unlikely, fortunately, at that moment, Assistant Monsino appeared in time, reciting an exorcism prayer causing her to temporarily vanish. Recognizing the danger, the assistant Jerry and the doctor gathered and devised a plan to seal Mary's soul back into the doll before she could resurrect. However, when the ceremony began, Assistant Monsino struck a match, but it quickly went out. The second match did the same. By the third match, Mary's face appeared right behind him. Suddenly, the cross above caught fire, fell on the assistant and burned him to death. Jerry and the doctor panicked and fled. Meanwhile, the ceremony was about to commence. Hundreds gathered, and along with Alice pledged to offer their souls to Mary. The girl's eyes gradually turned white, as if she had completely merged with the witch. Jerry and the doctor tried to think of a way to stop the ceremony. They believed that only doubt could weaken faith. Seeing this, Jerry appeared among the crowd and shouted that it was all a lie. He admitted that he had orchestrated everything. Despite the crowd's continuous jeering below, he remained undeterred. At that moment, a voice echoed in Alice's mind, warning that if she didn't complete the ritual, her body would revert to being mute and deaf as before. Alice realized she had been blinded by the witch all this time. The girl admitted that Jerry's words were true, inciting immense anger among the crowd below. The ceremony officially failed, and the oak tree immediately caught fire, causing hundreds of people to flee in panic. Within the flames, Mary gradually appeared, removing her mask to reveal a terrifying burned face. The clergyman had no time to react before she lunged at him, touching him and turning him to dust. Jerry attempted to lead Alice away, but Mary blocked their path. The demon's power far surpassed that of a normal human. He had no means to resist and could only endure the pain. Just as the witch was about to kill Jerry, Alice unexpectedly intervened. According to the principle, Mary could only resurrect through her descendants. The moment she touched Alice, her own body began to dissipate. Jerry held Alice's lifeless body, overwhelmed with sorrow. A man who didn't believe in God now, for the first time, prayed for the Lord to save this poor child. Miraculously, Alice, who had just been motionless, opened her eyes and looked around. She returned to being mute and deaf as before, as the witch's magic had vanished. At the end of the film, Jerry met with Dr. Natalie and recounted the events he had witnessed. He confessed that he still couldn't believe it. The doctor smiled and suggested that perhaps God truly exists. The film concludes with a quote from the Bible: "Beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing but inwardly are ravenous wolves." The movie ends here. What are your thoughts after watching? Please leave a comment below. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to follow more exciting films in the future. Goodbye and see you again.